Hi, in this video I'm taking a look at a 1073 emulation by KIT Plugins, which promises to faithfully emulate not one but 12 different 1073 EQ channels from Blackbird Studios in Nashville. Now KIT Plugins has quite something to live up to with its Blackbird Studios emulations, because I really like the BB N105, which is an emulation of another Neve console at Blackbird Studios in Nashville. Now you may think 1073 emulation, haven't we seen that before? And yes, so the question is, does this provide something extra or special when I compare it to my 1073 hardware equalizer, which is an emulation by Heritage Audio, the UAD 1073 plugin, and the Lindell KIT plugin by Plugin Alliance, which is also a 1073 emulation. So let's go. So let's immediately take a look at what their website is saying about the plugin. So it's called Blackbird N73, also called BB N73 in other places on the website. And you can currently buy it for $75, which is a discount of 50% as introductory sale. And it looks like it's fully M1 compatible. Now KIT Plugins says that they've selected 12 different 1073 EQs from Blackbird Studios in Nashville. And with the help of the owner of Blackbird Studios, they took the favorite characteristics from each unit to build a perfect channel in the plugin. They basically modeled as much as possible from those channels, so-called real-world models, and everything from cables and modifications to age and irregularities have been factored into the final product, being the plugin, of course. They've also used full-range modeling technology to capture the sound and character of the original hardware, and this particular modeling technology allows modeling of the full-range frequency spectrum from 10 Hz to 96 kHz to model all of the analog depth and color of the original gear. It comes with presets, for example also from Joe Carroll, and it has the classic 3-band EQ from the 1073. They've also modeled a touch of the harmonic distortion that is provided by the preamp section in this module. And additionally, they've also modeled the output bus of a Neve 5080 console. And that's also intended to add some subtle harmonic content, giving weight and punch to sound like a real Neve console. And there's a free trial for 14 days, so by all means, before buying, go try it out yourself. Now, full disclosure, KIT Plugins did give me a license for this plugin, but anything I say in this video is really my experience and my honest opinion, and they haven't seen the video before I released it on the channel. Okay, let's take it for a spin in Cubase. So this is an acoustic guitar track from my band The Wash, from an upcoming song that will be released April 2023. And I have the KIT BB N73 on there. And although there seem to be a lot of buttons, most of it is pretty simple. We have the presets over here from Joe Carroll, KIT Plugins, Lamont Sincere. You have the input level, the output level. You can save your own presets. And there are some options with regard to oversampling, low, medium, high. Default is medium, and I'll leave it set to that for this test. And you can also link the oversampling and the hum level for all plugins in your project if you want to. Now in the middle here you can turn on tooltips, which shows you help texts for the various controls. And for the EQ it's just showing the level in dB. With the fader button you can change the color of the main fader. Now continuous gain and auto gain have to do with the preamp button over here. So when I have not enabled them, I can increase the preamp gain in steps of 5 dB, I think it is. If I set it to continuous gain, I can increase it in steps of whatever I want. And if I set it to auto gain, it will compensate and increase an input level by decreasing the output via the fader. And that's quite nice because it prevents you from blowing your ears or speakers when you increase the preamp level to get some extra saturation. Now you do have to set this switch to mic mode in order to be able to add some saturation via the preamp button. And you can also turn the saturation off entirely, but that kind of defeats the purpose. Now you have the 12K band over here, the mid and mid-high band that you can switch the frequency off, increase the gain, lower the gain. We have a low shelf over here. And we have a low cut filter down here. EQ can be turned on and off, and you can switch the phase of the signal as well. Now there's also a master bus button over here. And according to the manual, this is designed to replicate the unique tone and effect of a Neve master bus amp. And this master channel is inspired by Blackbird's 5080 console, bringing your tracks to life with subtle compression and saturation. Now it's located after the fader in the signal chain. So you can drive into the master section by increasing the fader level over here. Alt-click reverts to default level. So let's quickly set this up on a guitar track. Yeah, pretty quick to set up. So by now, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and ring the little bell icon if you want to get notified when I publish another video. And for even more support, you can use the super thanks button or buy anything at the affiliate links in the description to these stores. Highly appreciated. So let's now compare this plugin to some other well-known 1073 emulations as well as my Heritage Audio hardware on the snare track and the vocal track. Yeah, so 1073 EQ is typically something that I use on a snare track, and then I apply the Andrew Shepp's EQ technique for snare, which I have a separate video about, which I will link in the description. So what I've done for this test is that I've put my hardware 1073 on a snare top track, and then I dialed in the sound that I liked, and these are the settings. So a low cut at 80, a bit of a boost at 220, some more boost at 7.2K, and some high sheen at 12K. Now I then looked at the curve that I had set up in the hardware with Plugin Doctor, and I've tried to match that curve with the various 1073 plugins that I'm using, being the BB N73 of course, the UAD 1073 and the Lindell 80, which is a 1073 emulation from Plugin Alliance. The most notable difference here is in the low end, where you see that the hardware has a bit of a flattening of the curve, but the BB N73 doesn't. Obviously, my hardware is not the hardware that they modeled with the BB N73, so this doesn't mean that's inaccurate, but both of the other plugins did model that flattening a bit, because if you look at the UAD curves for the plugin, again, green is the hardware and the other color is the UAD, there is a bit of flattening in that curve, although not exactly like my hardware, but it's similar. And if you look at the Lindell, again, the plugin curve shows a bit of flattening, and I think this match is probably the closest of the three plugins. But let's listen if we can hear any difference in sound, what it's all about of course. And I'll first let you listen to the snare without any EQ, and then I'll let you listen to the various examples, first the hardware and then the various plugins. So what do you think? Can you hear any difference at all? Do you prefer one over the other? Let me know in the comments. Now another use for a 1073 EQ for me is a vocal. And as an example, I'm using the vocal recording of an Awash song called 500 Miles, which was recorded by Perfect Sounds Unleashed. And I'll put his socials in the description. Now these were the settings on the hardware that I used to get a vocal sound that I liked. I took out a very low end, there's no use for that in a vocal, but I did give it a little bump around 110. To get a bit more weight in there, took out some 3.2K for harshness, and I bumped the high end to get some shine and sparkle on the vocal. And again, I then tried to match the hardware using Plugin Doctor, and this was as close as I could get for the BB N73, green is hardware. These were the resulting curves for the UAD 1073, and this is the curve I managed to get for the Lindell 80. But then again, I'm not running a 1073 from Blackbird Studios, but it's a Heritage Audio emulation of a 1073 in hardware. Now the settings on all three plugins were kind of similar to the hardware, but sometimes the boost or cut was just a little bit less as on the hardware to get a similar curve. So let's listen to the differences, starting with the vocal without EQ, and everything is loudness matched of course.
Storm is rising, the wind is crying, stars are falling down. Storm is rising, the wind is crying, stars are falling down. Storm is rising, the wind is crying, stars are falling down. Storm is rising, the wind is crying, stars are falling down. Storm is rising, the wind is crying, stars are falling down.
So what do you think? Can you clearly hear the difference? Do you like one of them better? Let me know in the comments. Now next up, I also dialed in a bit of saturation on the hardware. And I did that on the vocal, and I added just a little bit too much of that edge so that the characteristic of the saturation at least is clearly audible. And then I tried to match the amount on the plugins. Let's have a listen.
Storm is rising, the wind is crying, stars are falling down. Storm is rising, the wind is crying, stars are falling down. Storm is rising, the wind is crying, stars are falling down. Storm is rising, the wind is crying, stars are falling down.
Yeah, so all of that saturation is definitely in the same family, but if you preferred one over the other, let me know in the comments. So let's now have a look at the master bus section of the plugin on the full mix. But before we do that, let's check it out in Plugin Doctor. Because as you can see over here, I have the KIT plugin loaded up here. Let's disable the equalizer, which makes it flat, and then look at the harmonic analysis. And you can see that even without any added preamp gain or mic setting, there are already harmonics being generated here, which I guess is true for most analog hardware. Just by running the signal through your analog module, you are already affecting it, even if you set the equalizer to 0. Now if I now enable the master bus over here, you can see that the harmonics are raised in level a bit. And if I drive the level, well, I guess everything goes up. So let's see what that sounds like on the full mix. So this is a full mix of a live track of my band The Wash called Inner Drive. And on the first track I have no plugins, and on the second track I have the KIT BB N73 with the master bus enabled and driving it by about 8 dB, so that we can hopefully clearly hear what the master bus is doing. And I have compensated the gain by lowering the gain again with the same amount after the BB N73. So let's start with the clean mix and then regularly switch over to the channel which has the BB N73 with master bus section enabled.
I can live two lives if I would. No, it satisfies more. Do one thing good. You're the better of me. Oh, I want the key. I turn the lock. I can't break through my mind. Stop me, you're the better of me. 'Cause I'm on the run. Yes, I'm on the run. I'm ready to.
Yeah, I think it's quite clearly audible when I'm driving it this much. I especially hear it on the kick drum, which really gets compressed a lot. So I'm not sure I like it driving it this heavily on this track, but it does add something which can be useful. Now to check the performance of this plugin, I also made a project in which I created 32 channels of the snare top track with this plugin on there. Let's have a look. As you can see, 32 tracks, and they all have the BB N73 on there with just the settings that I used for the snare top track in the earlier comparison. Oversampling is all medium, and if you look at the performance meter, you can see that, well, ASIO guard barely registers 10%, I think, and the rest of the performance indicators are even lower. Now I can also set oversampling to higher, and because I've linked oversampling, that will change the oversampling on all the plugins. And as you can see, I think that pretty much doubles the performance requirements. So it's up to you if you feel this is really necessary. But on medium oversampling, I think the performance is quite doable, and it's probably not a plugin that I would put on every track anyway. So does this plugin bring something extra compared to all the other 1073 emulations that are out there? Well, for one thing, it's modeled on the 1073 channels which are in Blackbird studios. I can't check or compare the plugin to those channels, of course, but I'm sure those channels in that studio are some top-of-the-line modules. Practical plus is also the auto gain that they have when you turn up the preamp. Not every 1073 emulation has that. I know the Lindell 80 had it as well, and it's quite convenient if you want to quickly verify how much saturation you want to add. Now, another extra thing that this plugin brings is the master bus section. I don't think I've seen that on any other 1073 EQ, but if I'm wrong, please tell me in the description. but to me that seems like an extra on this plugin as well. So I'm definitely going to try it out on some of my mixes and see whether in the long term it can replace some of the 1073 emulations that I have already and currently use in my mixes. Now, if you feel that you couldn't quite hear the difference of this plugin compared to the other ones on the YouTube audio, I've also provided all files with the download link below so you can check them out and compare them in your own DAW. Now, another favorite KIT Plugins plugin of mine is the BB N105, and I've also made a review video on that plugin, which you can check out over here. Have a look, enjoy, and see you soon.